2 months ago, I walked out of an Apple store with a complete current generation Apple ecosystem, an iPhone, a MacBook, an iPad, Apple Watch, and AirPods for $1,925. Less than my iPad Pro now costs without a keyboard. And the promise I made was simple: 30 days using nothing but Apple's cheapest hardware, followed by a verdict on each device. Well, the month is up. It's actually kind of been 2, and my thoughts are written. A couple of these devices, I gotta be honest, really did surprise me, and one of them in a direction that I did not see coming. But, we gotta address a big fat elephant first. You see, when I made that video, I had remarked that Apple had thus far held off on increasing prices despite the RAM crisis strangling the entire rest of the industry. Well, the troll toll finally came for Cupertino too, and Apple pushed up MSRPs across most of their categories. But interestingly, the low end kinda got off easy. The biggest hikes in both dollars and percentage landed in the highest end Macs and iPads. And the Apple TV, I guess. But the budget stuff has been nearly untouched. Now, the MacBook Neo did get a $100 price hike, not too bad, as did the base iPad, which that one's a little worse, I guess, because that's a 30% hike, even though it's only $100. But the iPhone 17e, the Apple Watch SE, and the AirPods all held in price. For now. If history is any indicator, I don't think Apple will raise prices on these per se. They'll just quietly delete the base storage tier and let the step-up model become the new starting price. Kind of like what they did with the Mac Mini. So not a price hike, but it is, because like you can't buy it for a lower price. You know what I mean? Watch for this when the new iPhones arrive. I'm almost certain this will be the case. And then, well, just last week, the other shoe dropped. Apple announced the new Apple Upgrade program. Move into a neighborhood, they said. There will be less noise. Wow, that leaf blower's annoying. You know what's not annoying? This comfortable hat from Copeland Supply. Do you get it? It's the buttons in the corner of a window on your Mac. Or a stoplight. Get it today at Copeland.supply. Oh, we have other hats too. This one and a black one. It's a Mac Pro. It's the only Mac Pro you'll ever want. All right, it's a lease-to-own, well, kind of own program. Monthly payments over a 12 or 24-month term, at the end of which you've paid roughly half of the device's price. And from there, you either hand it back to Apple and start with something shiny and new, or you buy it out. And to Apple's credit, the residual plus your previous payments never exceeds the device's original MSRP, so if you keep it to term, it's effectively 0% financing. But let's not kid ourselves about why this exists. People are holding on to their devices longer and buying less, and Apple would rather collect a modest monthly tithe in perpetuity, and then also profit a second time reselling your otherwise immaculate 2-year-old hardware, than watch upgrade cycles stretch to 5 years from 4. They wouldn't be doing this if they weren't making money on it. Which I guess sets up the exact question this dumb little experiment accidentally answers. In a world where everything is getting more expensive, should you lease nicer hardware forever or just buy the cheap stuff outright? Is Apple's budget lineup even worth owning? Well, buckle up, Chuckle Chump, because I got the answers. We begin with the crowd favorite, the MacBook Neo. I was not excited to daily drive this thing, not because I think it's necessarily bad. I mean, I used the Neo part-time for my review and I found it to be adequate, but as a daily MacBook Pro user, I was not looking forward to this as my lone PC. Well, shame on me, because it was actually fine. Most of my day consists of email, document writing, and file management. Not intensive stuff, but let's be honest, that's the workflow of the vast majority of computer users on Earth. But continued arguments that 8 gigabytes of memory just can't realize real work in 2026, they're just wrong. And the MacBook Neo continued to demonstrate that it could handle more than I thought it could chew. During my time with the Neo, I vibe coded a little extension for 3 popular NLEs, non-linear editors, video editing applications. And not only did the Neo compile builds on device, but I tested them inside Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, and DaVinci Resolve on the Neo itself without a single hiccup. Now, was it the most performant? No. The best comparison I feel like I can make is that it felt like an older M-series MacBook, which I do have experience with because my wife just replaced her M1 Air and I would use that when it was around the house. Except for, here's the thing, the M1 was so absurdly good back when it was released that even in 2026, it doesn't feel like a 6-year-old computer. And Apple's iPhone silicon has gotten so good that even the last gen A-series chip that is used in the Neo is not just completely serviceable as a Mac, but has single-core performance that sits within spitting distance of modern flagship M-series silicon and runs circles around that old M1 that still feels fine today. So needless to say, it was pretty great. I even threw macOS 27 Golden Gate on it, which shockingly helped performance rather than hurt it, despite it being an early beta. Now, Golden Gate does a far more aggressive version of AppNap, where idle apps that you're not using appear to be shoved into some like super deep sleep on swap, where switching back to those apps, it takes longer to reopen. It almost feels like you're opening them fresh rather than resuming from memory. And I don't know if that is a beta anomaly or a deliberate crutch for low memory Macs, because I don't see it on my MacBook Pro where I have the beta running as well. But what I will say is that the Neo felt more responsive on Golden Gate for it. Perhaps the ultimate tell that this machine is just fine and dandy. Well, the challenge ended weeks ago, and I'm still primarily using the Neo. Now, that's entirely my laziness. My working files are still living on it, and I haven't moved them over. But even though I miss my MacBook Pro, it's not a must switch back right now scenario, like a device that we'll be talking about next. The verdict is, well, it's genuinely good. The battery is good, the display is okay, the keyboard is great, it feels like a real MacBook. And as the memory crisis forces PC makers to try and fail to ship tolerable 8GB laptops, the Neo stands as proof that it can be done well. And by virtue of cost, this class of machine might have to become the norm for a few years to come for a lot of people. My Mac buying advice is now pretty simple. Buy the cheapest one that meets your memory and storage needs, because really the only people that the Neo won't work for are people who already know it won't work for them. And you might be surprised to find out that even it might work for you. But yeah, does that make sense? Next, the iPhone 17e, and this is the one that shocked me because I assumed it would be my easiest recommendation of the bunch. I mean, an iPhone is mostly just an iPhone, right? Understand that I do not come at this from some spec snob's perch. I mean, my daily driver is an iPhone Air, one of my favorite devices in recent Apple history, but hardly a benchmark queen. It has but one camera, it throttles if you look at it wrong. It's warm right now. And it has mediocre battery to boot. I mean, look at it, what can you really expect? So, on paper, beyond a few camera features and a Pro motionless notch display, there is quite literally nothing other iPhones can do that the 17e can't. But in practice, this does not feel at all like a modern iPhone. And not because of the notch. I actually forgot about the dynamic island and live activities altogether after about a day or so, despite them technically being supported, though buried in Notification Center. Their usefulness is largely ephemeral, and I didn't really miss them. What made this phone feel old was just how slow it felt. And I don't mean the 60 Hz display, though that did bother me plenty. It frequently drops frames during animations, even at 60 Hz. Apps relaunch constantly as if they had been shoved out of memory, and yes, there is a little less memory in here, but not so little that I should be effectively running 5 apps at a time. And the phone ran so persistently warm, like warm enough, that I actually ended up searching the web, convinced that I had received a defective unit. But nope, that's just the iPhone 17e. Take it outside, and it gets worse. The display soaks up the sun. It dims faster and further than any iPhone I've used in years. It is genuinely hard to see outside, and the whole device turns so choppy that it makes low power mode look sprightly. How does it have worse thermals than this? I don't know. Now, credit where it's due, battery life is good, and the speakers are decent, way better than my iPhone Air. The display, when indoors and not thermally limited, does look nice and bright despite the low refresh rate. But I kept waiting to get used to this phone, and I never did. I spent nearly the entire month yearning for a better one, and I gotta admit, at the 3-week mark, I cracked. I broke down. I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. One too many mediocre photos of my daughter sent me crawling back to the Air, which is hardly a sharpshooter itself, I might add, and it also was conveniently around the time that I was able to run the iOS 27 beta. You know, the one with all the new Siri and Apple Intelligence tricks that the iPhone 17 will never run because it lacks the memory and silicon to do so. My verdict is that this phone is acceptable with compromises, but your phone is it's like the one device where you just shouldn't accept any compromises. It's the most used computer in your life. It lives in your pocket every waking hour of your day. It gets touched hundreds of times per day. This is the category where you buy the best device that you can justify and afford. And best doesn't mean newest, by the way. I would sooner point people to a used or refurbished iPhone 15 Pro. It has better battery, far better cameras, a better display, better everything for right around 17e free money. If you're pinching pennies on a phone, buying used or refurbished is the move. Do not buy this phone. I can't believe I was going to say that. I thought I was going to love it. Which brings us to the iPad and frankly a slightly embarrassing admission. I basically didn't use it at all. I never even finished setting it up. And if you know me, that will sound like a startling statement because my iPad Pro is my most used computer after my iPhone. It goes with me everywhere, and I genuinely like iPadOS. I do not want my iPad to be a Mac. We've talked about this before a lot. I'm not going to rehash it. But this month really reinforced something that I had suspected for some time. What I love is the iPad Pro, not the iPad as a general lineup or iPadOS. Because once you strip away the tandem OLED, the impossibly light body, the great battery, and the camera that's good enough at document scanning to ditch my flatbed, well, the whole pitch collapses. By contrast, this base model silicon is ancient, and it feels like it. The 17E feels like a speed queen by comparison. You've got dropped frames, animations wading through molasses, apps that can barely run concurrently. The display is unremarkable in every sense of the word. It's dim, it's non-laminated with that hollow air gap that puts your finger and the display further away. There's some visual separation. And no, I did not buy the keyboard case. Because A, it didn't seem like it was in the spirit of the challenge to spend basically as much on the keyboard case as the iPad, but B, because it wouldn't have mattered. Because I pull my iPad Pro off dozens of times per day from its keyboard. I use it to read articles and watch videos like an iPad, not like a computer. And well, this iPad was just bad enough that I didn't even want to do that. I would rather watch YouTube on the Neo and read articles on the 17E. So my verdict is like hard pass, man. I mean, the iPad has always been an accessory, a luxury that nobody strictly needs. And the higher end models, I think, have and continue to justify themselves by being just wonderfully delightful. But this one feels like it's a decade old because in many ways, it kind of is. Meanwhile, you've got the MacBook Neo that can do everything that one might actually want to do from a computer, and that makes the argument for this bad iPad even weaker by the day. And if you're buying a tablet for your kid to destroy, don't buy this iPad. Get like an Amazon Fire Dingo thing for like $100. I gotta be honest and come clean. I've been saying, oh, don't buy the iPad Air, buy the cheapest iPad or the iPad Pro, but don't buy this iPad. It's not good. I was shocked how bad it was. The Apple Watch SE3 was the device that I figured I would be indifferent to and not care about at all. But I was wrong. I loved it. Coming from the bulky Ultra 2 down to the 40mm SE was an adjustment. I mean, the display is significantly smaller and the battery life is nowhere near as good. But beyond that, day to day, it barely felt different at all, at least with software. Navigating was actually snappier than on my Ultra 2 because the budget watch runs newer silicon than my one generation old Ultra. And it's got all the expensive, cool tricks of those fancier watches, like an always-on display and double tap. The SE3 is new and it feels new. And it actually feels a lot different, read better, on the wrist because aluminum and composite are an unsurprisingly great combo. This thing is wicked light and just disappears as soon as you lower your wrist. Now you do lose sensors. ECG and blood oxygen, they're still gone. But you'd really struggle to notice most of the time because Apple keeps getting better and better at doing more with less. Apnea detection when sleep tracking is the perfect example. It runs on accelerometer-measured breathing disturbances and wrist temperature, rather than the blood oxygen sensor like on the fancier watches. This was an approach that Apple had to lean into hard after Masimo had the lawsuit a couple years ago where they kneecapped the blood ox sensor in the US. So the sensorless SE3 flags it just like the Ultra does. Workout tracking was great. Replying to messages was fine. And the things that I actually do on an Apple Watch remain, frankly, unchanged. The one real downside is battery. On heavier days, I was into the red by the time I got into bed. On a brand new watch, that was fine, but frankly, you give it a couple years, and with the Apple Watch batteries that famously degrade quite fast, barely makes it to bed will become doesn't. But the fix is buying the larger SE. It's just $30 more. You get the bigger display, the bigger battery. It's probably the one you want anyway. But I will admit that, boy, that small watch does really look good on a wrist. My final verdict is that it's genuinely great. An easy recommendation. It's 95% of the Apple Watch experience at a cost and form factor that's easier on the wallet and, frankly, on the wrist. If you're a bona fide athlete who treats sensor data as gospel, buy up, or frankly, buy like a Whoop or something. But for everybody else, fitness enthusiasts included, Just get the SE. It's literally $219 on Amazon right now. Like, what? It's so good. That's insane. Now, while I refuse to wear an Apple Watch to bed, today's sponsor, Fitnexa, and their Somnipods 3 are in my ears almost every night. I actually have 2 pairs. These are earbuds built specifically for sleep. They nest inside your ears concha, weigh just 3.3 grams apiece, and as a side sleeper, well, I can lie directly on one and forget it's even there. The better-known competitor that I wore before these would start excavating their way out of my ear canal about 20 minutes into side sleep. Not so with these. Hybrid ANC blocks up to 42 decibels of ambient noise, and adaptive seal compensation retunes it in real time as the fit shifts overnight, which in my house has to contend with a snoring spouse and the drone of a baby monitor. But the feature that earns them a spot in this particular video? Onboard sensors that track your sleep stages and position all night, feeding an AI coach in the Fitnexa app that serves up recommendations that are actually useful. So I get all the data without wearing a watch to bed. Most nights, I don't even play audio. I just pop them in, toggle ANC, and night-night. I enjoy the silence. But if you want that sound, because you're a baby, there are ambient tracks stored right on the buds, plus a bigger library in the app that you can stack however you like. And with LDAC support, you can listen to really high-resolution Bluetooth music if that's the way you like to fall asleep too. Battery runs 12 hours in sleep mode, 6.5 hours with ANC active, and the case stretches that to 48 hours total. So I charge about once a week. And the private in-ear alarm that wakes you up without waking your partner would justify these on their own if you're the designated early riser in your home. Hit the link below to save on your pair today. Last up, the AirPods 4. My AirPods Pro 3 come with me everywhere, every single day. I mean, look. They live in my pocket. They are easily my favorite Apple product of the last decade, which is why it pains me to report that the AirPods 4 preserve exactly one piece of the magic of the AirPods Pro, and that is the instant pairing and ecosystem switching. But other than that, they are like unremarkable in almost every way. The sound is mediocre because without the silicone tip, there's no seal, and without a seal, there's no bass. The battery is mediocre. There's no ultra wideband, which I learned the hard way when I lost these for like 2 days with no precision finding to guide me to find them. So I just heard like a little muffled little speaker chirping from inside a pair of shorts at the bottom of the laundry. Thank goodness I had the noise canceling model with the speaker. I don't know what I would have done without. Wow, they feel like they're from 2016. Really, the only thing I missed after moving back to the Pros was that these have a pretty large case, and the case of the AirPods 4 is just small and adorable. My verdict is simple. Nobody should buy the AirPods 4 unless the Pros physically do not fit inside your ears at all. The math doesn't even math. AirPods Pro 3 run $199 basically all the time and routinely dip below $170 on sale, while old stock Pro 2s float around for around the same amount of money as the ANC-equipped AirPods 4. If saving $30 to $40 is the deciding factor between the AirPods 4 and the AirPods Pro, just skip AirPods entirely, man, and just like stick to wired earbuds. They'll be better. I'm not joking. The AirPods 4 suck. So an Apple product is an Apple product, right? I mean, the software that ships on all 5 of these devices is basically identical to what ships on their flagship counterparts. The same iOS, the same iPadOS, the same macOS, the same instant pairing and handoff tricks that you get on all AirPods. And for years, that software has been credited by others, but also certainly myself, as the source of Apple's magic, the ecosystem tie-in. But this month really made a pretty strong case that at least I have been giving credit to the wrong half, because the experience varied wildly between these 5 devices, while the software never really changed, which means much of the magic was in the hardware all along. The Neo and the SE3, I think, carry enough of that to recommend, but the iPad and the 17E, and certainly the AirPods 4, do not. And that leads me to, well, the advice that you'll never hear from Apple, and frankly, probably not many other tech reviewers, especially not after the unveil of a program designed to keep you leasing forever. Just buy to own, man. And if you can't afford something new, that's fine. Strongly consider something used. Brand new budget hardware is, inherently, a middling value. Even Apple Gear depreciates, however well it may hold its value compared to everybody else. I think of it kind of like Toyota, right? A Toyota is not going to depreciate the same as a Ford, but for the price of a new base model Corolla, you can drive off in a 3 or 4-year-old Lexus, a machine engineered to a standard that new economy car never aspired to. And despite being a couple years old, that machine is what it is today, what it was back then. A 2-year-old iPhone 15 Pro is that Lexus in an iPhone 17e price point. Sure, you give up the ceremony of peeling the plastic off a factory fresh box. You've got a scratch here or there too, not that dissimilar from a car, I guess. That new car smell of our world is gone, right? It's an older phone, but you keep the part that matters, and that is hardware good enough to carry that magic from today into the years to come. Which of these would you want to live with? And which of them would be torture? AirPods for anyone? Let me know in the comments down below. But most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy.